Hi, and welcome back to Somatic Wise, where we reconnect with human nature and it all can start healing. It's early springtime and everything is coming into blossom here in the urban biodiversity oasis. I'm seeing more life come back every day. So it's time for an update as to the cool things that are going on around here and a little review about why such oases of nature are so important in the middle of the city. So stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss this one. So I began the biodiversity oasis in my garden because I felt it's the right thing to do, but later I started noticing how utterly delightful it is and how good it is for my own well-being. Since I'm the steward of this urban land my house sits on, I'm purposely supporting as much biodiversity as I can. Bio means life and diversity means different, so I'm supporting different forms of life that naturally occur here. This is a coastal sage scrub biome within a Mediterranean climate, about 33.7 degrees north of the equator. Since so many humans want to live here, this natural habitat is increasingly rare. So the biodiversity is that there's many different native plants, which brings back the native critters, and the yard itself has a lot of multiplicity. That is, it's a system composed of many diverse subparts. The plants in my garden are either native, food producing, or fulfilling another specific function in this little ecosystem. For those whose housing situation may not include access to a yard, it's also possible to do this in communal gardens in cities. My own city has several. If your city doesn't, you might want to contact your council person and suggest to them that a community garden is needed. Ask your neighbors to call too. Little oases can also happen on balconies and in containers. Container gardening brings biodiversity where before there was only pavement. Now here's where our little local actions can hugely matter on a larger scale. The Earth has lost 68% of the world's wildlife in the last 4 decades. Land use change and development is still the largest cause, and land in the American West continues disappearing. We have relatively little protected wilderness land in the continental United States. Some of the forests and open spaces are used for extraction. Shout out to Bloomberg.com for this fascinating article with great graphics detailing land use in the USA. Link below in the comments section. We've also lost 70 to 90% of the coastal sage scrub biome I live in. Globally, all wild mammals are only 4.2% of the total mammal biomass. The rest are humans and our livestock. So yeah, this is hugely important, and we really need greener cities. As David Attenborough says, we need every scrap of habitat possible, not only for quote-unquote them, but for us. If the ecosystems don't function, we too become extinct. Another reason is that it saves water. The American West is suffering tremendous drought, and locally native plants are naturally adapted to drought, while at the same time supporting 20 times the biomass of birds, pollinators, etc. My yard was actually part of another study that demonstrates this. Also, mulching, composting, and native plants instead of lawn or concrete or gravel rebuilds soils, increases carbon storage, reduces green waste to the landfill, increases permeability to the water table instead of runoff. And here's the lovely surprise. It's completely enchanting. The complexity and day-to-day changes in my garden soothe my soul and bring me back to life. This is where I go when I'm stressed. It's pretty much saved me, especially during the pandemic. I began gardening like this because I felt it's the right thing to do, but turns out now I need it for myself. I never know what wonder I'm going to discover. This is a living system that changes day to day, week to week, season to season. Around my neighborhood, I see many beautiful conventional gardens, some neglected, some carefully cared for. I can tell that many are cherished and that they provide beauty and nourishment for the caring human beings designing these gardens. I've really noticed it's less common to observe any changes in these conventional gardens from day to day, month to month. I don't often observe insects, birds, pollinators. It's almost always about the same. We are not taught this in schools in mainstream contemporary culture. The way we've been taught to do gardening doesn't nourish very much of the greater than human world. We're taught about cells and creatures, but not very much about the relationships between living beings in the world we live in. And when you stop to think about it, conventional gardening can actually be pretty violent. It involves really loud noises, fumes, heavy tools, chopping, and chemicals. Even if there are other reasons for the lack of critters, such as climate change or pesticides, we now have learned that the very best chance for them is to return is the plants and the ecosystems that they've depended on for thousands of years. And that natural biodiversity creates a natural resilience in the ecosystems. The differences in a native garden create versatility, and they're able to fend off threats without pesticides or chemicals. Perhaps more importantly, if I were to just go to the store and buy whatever some designer thinks is pretty or easy to sell, I would clearly have good intentions. I'd be a good consumer, going with what they want to sell me and helping the economy and all that. But if I choose with my personal aesthetics being the highest priority, I'd be shutting off my curiosity and my learning about the land. What wants to be there? What wants to get roots in the soil and live there? I'd lose the chance to be in reciprocal relationship, not a controller, but a steward. I wouldn't be learning about all these tiny but vital relationships between plants and critters, really cool stuff that really draws me in. It's about moving from an I to a we, creating connection with a greater than human world, the community that's still right here around us. So as a city dweller, this approach supports my connection with nature, and that is deeply nourishing for me. There are many studies showing that urban biodiversity is also good for physical and mental health of humans. I'll post a few of these links in the comments. And that's because you can't really separate human well-being from environmental well-being. Our bodies are constantly exchanging with the environment. As with any gardening, there is a learning curve to a biodiversity oasis and things to be aware of. For examples, milkweed, the food that monarchs and queen butterflies desperately need, happens to be toxic. That's part of their protection. And so it must be kept away from eyes, especially from pets and kids. Raccoon poop can carry some really nasty parasites and needs to be handled with extreme care. Keep children and pets away and don't touch or breathe it. But isn't this just part of life? Cars are far, far more dangerous, and we don't tend to give those a second thought. So then now that we've covered these underpinnings, what's going on in this little oasis right now? The major seasonal change happening is that California wildflower season is coming. This is the showy season in Southern California, and it's already starting to rise. Blooms are just peaking up, but by the time you watch this, we'll be roaring to life. This week I noticed the first California poppies. Pretty soon everything here will be popping with orange and green and blue and purple and yellow and all sorts of beauty. In a Mediterranean biome, it's dry all summer, but then it roars to life when there's moisture. Summer is more like winter. Many, but not all, plants go dormant, waiting out the dry spell. It's really important to just allow them to do that, to live out their life cycles in harmony with the biome around them. Around here, the annual struggle with the fox squirrels will soon reappear. The fruit trees are blossoming, and I really don't know yet how I'm going to get any of the fruit for me, as they tend to snatch it up, take one bite, and throw it on the ground, unripe. The raccoons have been strangely absent recently. I haven't even seen much of their poops. I'm sure they're around here somewhere. I'll put a link to a really interesting documentary about urban raccoons in the comments. Here are a few more tips to pro tips to support wildlife in urban gardens. Make sure to have water in the shade so that it doesn't get too hot. Rinse it out daily to prevent mosquitoes and algae growth. If you give your dog a haircut with organic shampoo and they have no systemic flea medication in their systems, you could put the cut fur for the birds. Birds need nesting materials in the springtime, and dog hair without pesticides is perfect for them. Many cities have free mulch programs, including chip drop. That helps rebuild soil and provide habitat for insects that birds need. Plants that are bioaccumulators to remove lead from the soil and other heavy metals include scented geraniums, sunflowers, which also support so many little layers of life, including hummingbirds, and supposedly hemp, which I haven't tried out yet. It's super important to have leaf litter, varied terrain, and little hidey spots for butterflies, lizards, bugs, and other critters. If we want life to continue on this planet, we must stop being so fearful and dismissive towards other forms of life. We have to learn to live with, not against. We must restore the planetary systems that create and maintain life here. Although some may say this is idealistic, it's also true, and it starts with each one of us. Thank you for watching Somatic Wise. I hope that you've been inspired to try some of what I'm doing here. Even a few locally native plants can make a huge difference. If you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below, and take care. Thank you for watching Somatic Wise. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, because that will help YouTube show this to more people. Till next time, take care.